Very good. It's 1:31, so thank everybody for coming out on a little bit of a snowy day, but if we didn't show up on snowy days, we wouldn't be back for another couple of months. So thank everybody for being here. We'll begin we have a few items on the agenda. Agenda item 1 is approved minutes of the November 16th, 2022 regular meeting. If you've had a chance to look at that ahead of time, if there's any changes or corrections, otherwise we will accept a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 2A, The Chase LLC, doing business as Crafty Taps, to be located at 3902 13th Avenue South, the West Acres Food Court, and it's a Class CWM. Steve will get us started off. Steve.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner, and welcome committee members. So we do have a number of license transfers or applications today that are in front of you. The first is for Crafty Taps, which is a self-service tap business. They are applying for a beer and wine, and then the M designation allows them to do growlers, and so they're a little bit of the off-sale part of it. Otherwise, it's beer and wine. There are no food requirements with this one, and they are allowed to have a physical bar. Their plan that I've seen in their diagrams does not really have a bar so much as a wall with the taps on it. So the concept with this, and this is in place in other parts of the country, and I think we have 1 or 2 restaurants in Fargo that are doing this too, a self-service tap. You would be carded when you enter. It is an enclosed area, and so no minors are allowed in. It is going to be in the food court area, and it will be where the Lighthouse Coffee was, if you're familiar with that, in that food court area. And so it'll be an enclosed area, and so no minors allowed. And so when you enter that facility or that location, you would present your ID. You know, they ID you at the door. And then you would tell them at that point, that would be the person that would take the transaction for funds, and that type of thing would happen. And they would issue you a card that would have your number of beers that you purchased on there. And you go up and swipe that card then at the tap, and then you pour your own tap.
So, Steve, do you mind if I ask you a question?
Yes,
so obviously, the food court at West Acres, my concern was that you can walk around with alcohol, and that's the one concern. But can you talk a little about, so people can buy food in the food court and bring it into this area, but it isn't like the opposite can happen. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, you're absolutely right. So the alcohol has to stay within the confined space that they have set up, where the beer will be self-served. Has to be consumed in that area, cannot leave that area, cannot wander around West Acres. Food, though, can be purchased from any of the various options in the food court and brought in there. They have a license that does not require food sales, so they're not gonna try to say that, well, these foods should count for our sales or anything like that. So I think the unique and novelty portion of this is that it is kind of a self-serve tap thing. The other concern is like about over-serving or over-consumption and that type of thing. But it is a small enough footprint that the one person that is doing the carding and taking the transactions for the funds is able to observe everybody. Plus, if Lydia came walking in and said, I want 1 beer, and Dave followed behind her and said, I want 20, well, the person with 1 beer probably isn't going to get into a situation where they're overserved, where you're going to watch the person with 20, right? Or you're probably not going to sell that many. But so that's really the unique flavor of this business, is that the alcohol service part is self-service.
Any other questions? And actually, if the applicant wants to come up and talk, you're welcome to. You're not required to, but if you want to, come on up. And any other questions, go ahead if you.
So what is the limit on the beer card?
Yep, so that's something that we can decide. So the technology in the POS, we actually have limits on the ounces on the beer card. So we're thinking somewhere in the 2 to 3 beer range. So
You haven't decided yet, though?
the system itself can go down to 32 up to unlimited. We're thinking about 40.
We have it currently programmed to 3 beers, 3 pints, 3 16-ounce pours.
So so you don't have that in the plan, how many drinks they can have?
Yeah,
You
it's
haven't
three.
decided.
No,
so-
it's 3. Yep.
So that is what it's gonna be,
Yep. That is what it's programmed at to start. is
per day?
per visit.
For visit.
Okay, so if someone left and came back in, would they be able to drink more?
At that point, we would have our manager make that decision based on maybe if they were gone for 4 hours and came back. Now, if they went and were gone at Crave for 4 hours, we wouldn't necessarily know that. But that's where that server training is going to be so important. Of
Who's
Right.
required to do server training in this situation?
it would be our manager at location.
So the manager is the one checking the IDs
Yes.
and managing the whole place?
Yes.
Are there any other employees?
No.
Just one person on
There
site?
will be one on site at all times. In busier situations like this time of year, we're likely going to have another person in there as well.
What would that person be doing?
That person is essentially being a beer ambassador. That's part of the role for the person there. So what we're doing, we want to focus on getting our local brands to people that are here from out of state, out of town. The mall gets obviously millions of visitors from out of town, and they're really being a beer expert, just like people at the breweries are today.
So who's doing like the busing and cleaning and things like that?
So it's all disposable cups.
Okay.
So we've got a garbage right there, right alongside. Everybody just throws their cups away. There is no glass, no plates, no anything to. We do have, as per the city requirement, we have sinks, the four basin sink. Thank you. For any spills that occur on site, we'll be able to clean those up.
Okay, so the manager wouldn't be responsible for stuff like if there's a big spill and there's a big push of people, they're staying in one place, making sure every person who's coming through is getting their IDs checked. They don't have any other responsibilities primarily.
It would be their responsibility to oversee the site at all times
Okay.
and everything that occurs within the site.
Okay.
What are the hours that you anticipate? I don't even know what the mall hours are, but I assume that's what they are.
Yeah, so food court hours are 11 to 8, Monday through Saturday, and then
To 6 on Sunday.
close at 6 on Sunday. And so we would open at 11, close early as well. We like that, Chase and I are both in the risk business. We both are in the insurance business. So knowing that, it's only beer and wine, the hours are limited. It's not late at night, that we feel very safe about this concept.
And the other entities in the mall there are Crave and Chili's, and I assume they're open later? I guess I don't know.
I would assume.
9. They're open.
Craven Chili's have outside exits that don't exit into the mall. These guys are dependent on the mall being open, and so they wouldn't have that option to be open when the mall isn't open.
So I'm very excited about the idea, given the fact that I've been stuck in that mall before. But what's kind of your business thoughts in terms of when you'll see the most traffic? Will it be like a Saturday afternoon? Dad, are you gonna have football there? That's a more important question.
The Bison games will be on.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
So when do you think you'll get the most traffic?
It's definitely going to line up with when the mall has its most traffic. It's going to be somewhat seasonal. I was at the mall on Saturday. It was crazy, obviously. We envision being very busy on weekends during the days and likely slower on Mondays, Tuesdays, things like that. But we do want to stay open and align with the mall hours because it's a brand thing as well, seeing that it's there.
Yeah, is this space enclosed?
It is.
There aren't tables out front with the food court where people will be consuming beer?
No, you have to consume alcohol in our premise. So
It is walled off, and you sit inside and are always inside that designated area.
So yeah, we actually have local company Grain Designs building that enclosure. So yep, it'll look very nice, but be just that, an enclosure. We have
Well, it's private. I mean, kids aren't gonna see people in drinking beer, watching the Bison game or anything like that.
Say that one more time, Bob.
Kids won't be in the food court seeing people drinking. It's completely closed off.
It is open air. The divider is really the table between the patron and the outside, but it would be open, and that is that's a mall thing. It's the open air concept. They want to be able to everybody to see everything that's going on, the different stores, their signs.
Okay.
I have a question then. So the possibility of people buying alcohol and handing it to somebody outside, that is not going to happen. Is that correct?
That's totally against the law, and the mall has security as well. So, the person that we have on staff is, the people that we have in mind to run this place have been in the business for a long time. They know how to see that kind of stuff. But yeah, that handing a beer outside of the premise is completely not allowed.
Okay, and then the other question is, we talked about over-serving. Actually, you'll be able to monitor people consuming alcohol a lot more closely than a lot of other bars because of you're actually measuring the number of ounces that different people have paid for. And so obviously they can pass them off, but really you can monitor a lot more than other places.
Certainly, and because we have wine as well, wine usually being a higher alcohol, the system itself, anytime an ounce of wine is poured, is a 2-to-1 ratio. Or I'm sorry, a 3-to-1 ratio. So they can only get the very limited amount of wine versus beer. Wouldn't want somebody drinking 36 ounces of wine right there and then stumbling to
So
the
they
mall.
can only buy one glass of wine.
It's a 3-to-1 ratio, yeah.
But
So
you say-
one full glass of wine.
Yeah, so per visit, because, so if they can have 3 beers, then that means 1 glass of wine.
Yes.
Okay, so here, I kind of disagree that this would be good for monitoring the server training part, because if somebody comes in and buys a card, so this isn't one of the deals where you stick the card in the machine yourself and the beer comes out. No, they're buying the card from you at the desk.
When they enter and they're ID'd, the patron provides a credit card. We put a hold on that credit card, much like a gas station pump. Gas stations do $75 hold now. Issue them the card. So then that card is limited to the amount of ounces that can be poured upon it already. When the patron returns that card, then their credit card is charged based on the actual ounces served. So if they only had 23.2 ounces, it'll be charged based on that.
Okay, so here's my concern is I think in a way, this makes a bit of a mockery of the whole server training thing, because let's say a person's been drinking, walks into your place, and he may not appear intoxicated, but now he's got a 3-beer window where sometime during that point, he could become that person that bartenders and waitresses are being trained and very seriously to deal with. So, I'm not sure I'm ready to make a decision on this. I mean, I appreciate you guys, changing technology and the world's changing, et cetera, but I think this has some serious questions about it.
And Bob, our employees will go through the exact same server training as working at Chili's. So they need to see that if somebody's walking in looking intoxicated, they have a right to refuse the service.
Of course.
Yeah.
But what about if the intoxication point becomes a half hour later when they're on their 3rd beer that they bought from you? There's not somebody there monitoring them per drink, et cetera. Most of the bars in the industry, they used to do 2-for-1s where people got served 2 drinks at a time. They've eliminated those type of promotions because of this point. So, I mean, I think I have a little bit of, a hurdle there to get over. And then, the other thing is certainly if this became a place where, hey, my wife and I are going to the movie, we'd love to have a beer. Well, let's stop in the mall food court, grab a couple beers, walk out the door with our paper cup, and go sit down in the movie theater, which I don't think is proper either. So that would be a concern. It sounds like you're not gonna allow that.
No, they would not be allowed to leave the premise with that beverage. It would have to stay there when they leave.
Okay, so I think Lydia's question is are there going to be times where there's only one employee there and that person's sitting at a kind of a front desk ringing up credit cards? Who's watching, the people playing in your bar there?
Sure. I understand that, and I would counter that to there are the two places in town which do already do the self pour that don't have somebody there at each spot watching every beer poured and don't have limits to the amount that pours. Just when they're done doing what they're doing,
Yeah.
it's on the till and then they pay for it.
My perspective is that with the 3 beers that they're anticipating, the mall hours, the crowd that they're probably looking at, this is probably gonna be the most controlled serving place that we have in the city. So I guess I'm not particularly concerned about the over-service side.
I think that makes the assumption, though, that people are affected by alcohol amounts in the same way, and they're not. And without some oversight here, that's what people are trained to do. And if you are actually expecting a decent-sized crowd at this bar, there's no way a single person can be carding and running credit cards and keeping an eye on all the patrons. I have a lot of concerns. And I'm actually also still not clear on the process here. So when they show up, they get carded, they run the card, and then they get charged for how much they drank to a limit. What's stopping somebody from drinking more?
The
than
card
the
itself will
Card
completely
itself
shut off
shuts it off.
access.
So they do run a card every time they get a drink?
Yeah, they get issued, so they give us their credit card, right?
Yes.
We issue them an RFID card. They
Okay.
use that RFID card to tap the wall, the tap wall. And so that system knows how many ounces have been poured to that card automatically. And once it hits its limit, it's cut off.
Okay. I'm still really, really concerned about if someone's just leaves and comes back, it's just starting a new tab.
And that's in training of our people that are there. It's a very small premise. It's not even, it's 650 square feet approximately.
23 by 27.
Yeah.
So
I
how
think
many
that-
people?
I don't know
can-
if this
yeah.
floor plan is
42.
accurate, but is there only 4 tables?
The interior piece is to be determined,
Oh,
but
okay. Yeah, I'm just looking at the size of the footprint you
the
have laid out
capacity
here.
that we are envisioning is 42
42.
maximum. So it's a relatively small space.
If I could add just real quick, one of my concerns is to have this bulk sale to me, if you had some way to monitor each time somebody purchased a drink, I think that would be a way, because it sounds to me like kind of now you pay in bulk, until they reach a capacity. So am I missing something there? Can you talk, because I guess at a regular bar, you have a server, and each time you purchase a drink, you're having an interaction, and that allows people to monitor how things are going. And to me, if I'm understanding this correctly, you can buy 3 or a certain amount of ounces. And do you get what I'm saying? Maybe I'm misunderstanding, but I guess that's my concern. That's why you have server training, so your servers can monitor how people are reacting. And to me, we're losing a little bit of that. If you can do that, you can purchase one time when you come in, and then that's it until you
I
hit your
agree.
capacity.
If I could offer some constructive
ahead.
criticism here, I would say that I would be more on board with this if you had another employee or 2 that was also going to be trained and could take some of the load off of the one, manager that you've got there. And I understand that the goal of this is to reduce that kind of cost, but that cost is there for a reason in my mind.
Steve, could you go through the classes that we have listed, CWM, and then also can you talk about the background check? Thank you.
The C is for beer, W is for wine, and M allows for growlers to be sold, to be carried off premise. So that's how we come up with the CWM. Just bear with me. So on the background check, there was on one of the applicants, DUI in 2006 and marijuana possession in 2005. And both of those are, pretty dated when we look at that type of incident. So they were quite a while ago. Other than that, the background checks are clean.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? I guess I'll just want to reiterate what I was talking about. With our majority of bars, you have a server, and when you purchase a drink, you have personal interaction. And to me, if you can address that somehow you're monitoring each time they purchase a drink, and I know you'll have the ability technologically, but to me, that's part of server training is to monitor how people are reacting. And so that's my main concern. I think it's a great thing, but the technology is great, but you have to make sure that we're also doing what we can from the other perspective. So any other comments or questions?
I'll just make a quick comment here, Commissioner, that I have had some calls from the trade about this, that they're concerned about this, so. It's probably a trend. I'm assuming that this is, and Steve, maybe is this a similar model that they want to use for the kiosk and the Bruhala? There's a beer kiosk going in there, is that right?
Not exactly. And I don't think that they're having a self-service type of function.
All right, because I have seen these at one place, and I have heard about them. The one place I saw them, it's no longer open. It doesn't matter which place it was, but you went up and served yourself, and you just put a credit card in and you poured a tap beer. There were waitresses and bartenders there, but there was nobody really having a sense of how many times that person was at that place. And that's what we're asking out of bartenders and waitresses too, to observe, geez, that guy's on his fourth drink. I better, maybe keep an eye on him or, get a sense if he's driving tonight, et cetera. So even though this is becoming more popular around the United States, I think it could be a fun concept. I agree. If I'm in the mall and I don't want to shop, I'm going there and telling my wife to come pick me up when she's done shopping. I think it's a cool idea, but I think from our standpoint, from my standpoint, I have some questions. It might be better to really be there and see the set or kind of visualize the setup, but.
Can I ask you a question? Would it be possible that you do it on a drink by drink basis, or does that not work in your model?
I think it'd be more possible to reduce the maximums, because drink by drink basis, it does somewhat eliminate it's an experience. We're trying to sell an experience inside of a shopping center. So I think it would be more apt to reduce the actual amount of liquid.
And I think if it's a 3-beer deal, every airport that I go to, the major airport, you sit and you order your drink with the thing, and then somebody shows up with the drink. A decade ago, I was out on the East Coast for a convention, and they had this wine system just like this. To me, I think that one person with in a bar where there's 20, 25 people, I think we're covered on that issue.
Yeah, and like I said, it would be staffed for more than one person during busy days, likely Saturdays, holiday season, probably all week.
And that person is situated right next to the wall as well. So they are always right front and center, watching as people are walking up and interacting with it.
And this technology is in town, as Steve mentioned, at a couple establishments too.
And I think it's important to note too, and I don't know if people, partake of craft beers and that type of thing, that's what they're going to feature, craft beers. A lot of times you don't want a full 16-ounce pour because you just want to taste it. You want to see how it, interacts with your palate. So maybe you're getting a 4-ounce pour or a 6-ounce pour or something like it's not even a full 16, just because you want to try some different flavors. And so, when I envision what they're saying, with people sitting and people watching, seeing what's going on, like Bob said, your wife wants to go shopping and you want to just sit and relax. There's an opportunity for somebody to do that. The other places that have alcohol there are sealed off pretty much from the mall, and so you really can't see that interaction, and see, do the people watching and that type of thing.
And the one thing I would add, if we approve this, we can also make changes if we start having issues. That's part, it's a new concept, and so from my perspective, it's a new business, and to give it a try, and if we have issues with overconsumption, I believe we would hear about it when there's
Yeah.
thousands of people walking by, and so obviously, you're going to be closely watched just because of the location, and so I think part of it is we have to realize we are going to, if there starts to be issues, then it can come back to us and we can make them, make some changes. So that's part of it too. So any other comments? Go ahead.
One last question for the gentleman here. When do you plan on opening and how far along on this are you?
So we have a March 1 date in mind. We did get informed yesterday that our wall is complete, ready to be delivered pending this license, and our tables and walls are in production, and are 10 weeks old.
Yeah, those are about 2 months out, so we're right there. So yeah, we have agreements on the equipment pieces like that, but yeah, we're envisioning a 3-1 opening. Hopefully allow everybody to watch some March Madness at the mall while they're shopping. But like I said, Chase and I are both in the risk business. We understand it. We help our clients with it. And this is a concept we feel comfortable with. We're lovers of technology and also craft beer and want to combine it and really help showcase some of the great beers we have around here, truly.
Very good. Any other
Just
comments?
add, last comment would be that I would like to see a more formalized, plan of action here for, during the weekends, during these busy hours, we will have more than one person working. For the growlers, you are bringing alcohol off site. So,
Sealed.
Yep. Then they're sealed then.
Yep.
But give us a number. Can people buy unlimited amounts of growlers? And I would also like to see a process on if people leave and come back. I think that should be, all these things should be easily incorporated into your plan.
Absolutely.
Very good. Any other comments or questions? Are we ready for a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we decide this at the next meeting. And I think Lydia asking for some, something on paper on what's your business plan, how you're going to follow up with the concerns we have, which is, you've done that pretty well verbally, but I think Lydia has a good point.
Very good. So that's a motion to continue this till the next meeting. Do you have a second?
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Nay. So it's tied. So then what happens, Steve?
You have to have a action in the affirmative, so this is a tie vote is like a negative vote or a no vote.
Okay.
So the motion was defeated then.
Okay. So then we can attempt to make another motion. Otherwise, do you have another motion?
I move that we approve, as recommended on the recommended motion, with the caveat that prior to our next meeting, we receive a formal business plan on the issues that Lydia brought up regarding, capacity issues, busy times, multiple servers. You can get the minutes, but basically move to approve with the repeat showing from this group 30 at our next meeting.
Do I have a second?
I have a question to that. What happens if we approve and then they don't bring the business plan?
We got 2 months before they open.
And this would still have to go through the city commission, and so anything that would be conditional, they would have to have completed.
Of course.
And we're very willing to do that ASAP.
Absolutely.
So we have a motion, do we have a second? Nancy, am I allowed to make a second? I'll make the second. Any further discussion or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you for the discussion and good luck.
Thank you.
And so I would reiterate, so we have some things that we would like you to get the additional information. And so if you can get back, and actually Steve can be your contact if that's okay. But then this will go on to the city commission. And so if we could get that completed before it comes to the city commission, that's our plan of action. Right, Steve?
Correct. It'll go to city commission. It's scheduled for Tuesday, the 27th. If I get their action plans in advance of that, I will email it out to the board.
That's
You'll,
great.
you'll receive them.
Okay.
Yep.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good discussion. Okay, we're on to 2B, LYH LLC, doing business as Little Brother to be located at 117 Broadway. This is a Class GH license. Steve?
Okay, so GH is a beer and wine with service at the table or booth. Food sales must exceed alcohol sales. And if you were watching in the paper a little while ago, the Little Brother went into the place on Broadway where Taco Shop had been. And I think they're calling it an Asian fusion concept, I guess. And so they wanted to get the food part open and then, and then apply for the liquor license. So I think the food has been open for 30 days. Let's see, they opened around the 1st of November. So maybe 45 days or so. And so they're now applying for a beer and wine license just as an enhancement to the dining experience.
Very good. And the background check, can you talk a little bit about that?
Get to that one. I don't think that there was anything. There was nothing of concern in the background check. Both the criminal history and credit history were clean.
Very good. So are there any comments or questions? And actually, if the license holder or applicant would like to speak, they're welcome to. Otherwise, they sure don't have to. And I don't know if they're here.
I'm not sure.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Otherwise, are we ready to make a motion?
Move to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
Motion and a second. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And now we're on to 2C, transport application for the 3803 Hospitality LLC, doing business as Holiday Inn Fargo, to 3803 Spirits LLC, doing business as Holiday Inn Fargo, to be located at 3803 13th Avenue South. And this is a Class ABH license. Steve?
This is for a full-service hotel license. It is an on and off sale. The off sale is limited to the guests of the hotel, so they can take something back to their room if they so choose. It does allow to have a full bar. There's no change in management here. This is a change in ownership on the Holiday Inn. So you can expect to see the Holiday Inn operating the way it has in the past, with, I'm sure, some enhancements or some new concepts and ideas to help business. With that, background check.
And while you're looking that up, Steve, I mean, the track record of the Holiday Inn, we haven't had issues in the past there that I can recall.
No, we haven't. One of the prior owners is deceased, and so we're seeing a number of his properties. There's a couple of applications on here where they're moving things along. So in the background check, we have one DUI from 2013, which again is outside of our range. We kind of look at about a 5-year range, and so that's getting out there about 10 years old. And we also have one charge off on a credit history on a different one of the applicants. But other than that, it's pretty clean. The charge off was like $500. So and I'm sure that there's probably an explanation for that.
Can I ask you the history of server training at the Holiday Inn? Obviously, they have lots of staff and lots of large events, and so have they had a pretty good track record of server training?
Yes, they always have. We have never had issues with, having them, hey, you need to get people in to get trained, that type of thing. They've always made sure that is being taken care of.
Very good. Any other comments or questions? Once again, this is a transfer, so I don't know if there's any other comments or questions. Otherwise, we'll accept a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any other further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And D is transfer application for 3803 Hospitality LLC doing business as Holiday Inn Express Fargo to 3803 Spirits LLC doing business as Holiday Inn Express to be located at 1040 40th Street South. And this is a Class ABH Limited. Steve.
So I just received communication within the last 24 hours that they would like to pull this idea or this concept, and they will no longer provide alcohol service at the Holiday Inn Express. And so, sorry for making you read through all that, but so anyway, we don't need to take action on that one. They're going to pull it from the agenda.
Thanks, Steve. I will not hold that against you, making you have to do all that extra hard work. So we'll just remove that and move on to 2E, transfer application from Concessions Management LLC doing business as Concessions Management to Fargo Forks Hockey Club LLC doing business as Fargo Forks to be located at 5225 31st Avenue South. It's a Class N stadium license. Steve.
Yes, so this is another one of those that I mentioned where the owner had passed away, and so the people managing his affairs are doing transfers to get it out of the family's name and into a different ownership group. The stadium license, we have a couple of them that are issued in town, one to the Red Hawks, one to the Fargo Force, one to the Fargo Dome. It does allow full alcohol, and it also allows beer and wine. There's not a food component or anything like that with it. It has to have a minimum, the stadium license has to have a minimum number of seats in it. And so that's kind of the restriction part of it, I guess.
Steve, can I ask you about server training there too? How have the experience has been there?
So in all of our stadiums, we have had very good success with server training. They typically will bring in somebody to do a large group server training so that if they have a lot of volunteers or something like, for instance, like at the Fargo Dome where a lot of the booths are manned by volunteers, the server training is done more on premise so that they, get all of the people completed at once. The Shields Arena in specific has always had very good server training coverage.
Thank you, Steve. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to swerve off topic. So we've been monitoring the Fargo Dome for football games. We have had 0 additional alcohol issues with the sale of beer and wine at the football games. And so that's been tremendous. And I'm sure a lot of people already realize this, but a lot of fundraising is done by the groups that are serving the alcohol. And so their funds that they're raising for their different charities are up 40 to 60%. Their amount that they're raising this year. And so from the perspective of the local community, that's been good news. And obviously we're thankful that we haven't had additional issues with alcohol issues during the Bison games. And so that's, although after the first quarter, I nearly had a heart attack because it was the worst quarter of football I've ever seen in my life, but that's an off topic. So I apologize, but I just wanted to share that. It's been good. And obviously all those different charities go through server training at the Fargo Dome. And so we've had, which is very good news. So I hope that's okay that I pass that along.
And Commissioner, they do use a similar model at Shields Arena where some of the booths are manned by service groups or, organizations trying to raise funds for their group, that type of thing. And so they also go through that server training and I would say the number of incidents, although they've had alcohol at the Fargo Force game since the beginning, but the number of incidents are really minor compared to, the other activities that are going on there. So,
and although I'm not compensated like our city auditor, $8 for a beer is very expensive for me. So that's why it limits it's a self-limiting thing because I have self-limited because of my funding. All right. All right. Moving on to F. The KSB Syndicate.
I think we need a motion on this one.
I'm sorry, I was having so much fun. I lost track.
approve.
It happens all the time at these meetings. So let's.
Again, we do have in the criminal history, we have 2 DUIs on one of the applicant, one from '87 and one from 2015. That's all I see in the background checks with the owners.
I apologize for that. And so now we are on 2E, and so do we have a motion?
Move to approve. Oh, pardon me.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And the last one on number 2 is KSB Syndicate Incorporated, doing business as Mangata Wine and Raw Bar to be located at 1666 First Avenue North, and this is a Class I. And I apologize if it was not pronounced correctly, but hopefully it was. Okay, Steve.
Yes, I struggled with that too, and our computer doesn't have the ability to put two little dots over the A. So that A then becomes more of a goes Moongata, I believe is, if I'm saying that right. Okay, yeah, Moongata. So I struggled with it too, Commissioner. It's a beautiful name. So we saw this concept without the liquor license when we were just talking about Bruhala and the licensed premise. I do have in this packet the correct floor plan that connects all of. Oh, maybe I didn't include it. I'm sorry. Anyway, all of those, remember last month, all of the little pink boxes are connected. I do have that in my office. I apologize for not getting it in the packet here. But this is that concept that we talked about, this I license where they will be able to sell beer and wine. And then the licensed premise is the area where their sales are occurring. They will be able to then take a glass of wine and go over and sit someplace else where somebody else has gotten a beer from Bruhala, and the people will be able to sit and be together. As far as the background check, there were no issues there, either credit history or criminal history.
And so if you don't mind, I have a quick question. So this is kind of a food court concept, isn't that correct? And if you don't mind coming up and just kind of giving a brief description, but is that kind of what it is? And then the other question I had for you is, so if somebody wanted to order something and take it home, is that a possibility? Go ahead.
Sure. So again, I'm Mark Bjornstad, representing Bruhala. So thank you, Commissioner, members of the committee, for that question. This is a unique concept, and so I know we've talked about this several times. It falls under that idea of food market. We don't really call it a food court. That's something that malls do. It's all semantics. But really what it is it's a community space. So we're extending that where we're taking what we've already built at the brewery with Drecker as a community open space, moving that over to Bruhala where we incorporate other businesses. It's a much bigger event center, things like that, and we can step away from what the brewery is and become much more of I'd say a big tent. So there's food concepts, there's retail concepts, but it's all in kind of a shared open space. And then your question about whether people can take items to go, that's, throughout the retail shopping there, that's one of the ideas that we encourage, that there's multiple ways to patronize this business, and that's what customers really love about food markets. They can come there to get items to enjoy on site. They can get items to go. So part of this concept is some specialty food, cheesemonger, things like that. Those are items you grab, you take away. Then they offer multiple other concepts and options to enjoy on site. As far as the alcohol goes, none of this alcohol that's up for license here is an off-sale license. So none of that leaves the premises. It's all consumption on site.
And so we talked about this, Steve, earlier, the overall concept, but now each person is going to have a liquor license and they'll have to be server trained and all that. That's kind of what we talked about, correct?
That is correct. There are two large meeting spaces where you can rent for like a wedding or a corporate event or something like that, and those are not in either license, and so that would allow the idea then that somebody, they could partner with somebody that has like an FA license, then that person could come in and cater an event. Is that correct, Mark?
Yep. And so really what we're doing is the same operations are going to happen no matter what. If we kept this all under Drecker's license, same thing's going to happen. We're going to serve alcohol at weddings or things like that. Those components, we're going to monitor that, and that's all going to be done right. Really what we want to do is we want to offer a different experience to customers, and so we're incorporating other businesses. There's no tying between these businesses. We're all just sharing the same venue to do that, and so that's the accomplishment that we're getting on this one.
Very good. Any other comments or questions? So can I ask you, obviously this is one, how many possible future partners are you thinking, or do you really not know? Are you kind of flexible to see how that goes?
Well, I think the one thing I've learned is I'm never going to predict the future, especially after the last 2 years that we've been through. But right now, we don't have anyone. I mean, the market's fully leased, and we don't have anyone else applying for a liquor license. 10 years down the road, and when there's new evolution in food and dining industry, maybe we'll have another concept that wants to come up and do that, and we would approach that at that time. But right now, that's not in our plan, or we don't see that.
Can I ask a question too, Commissioner,
Absolutely.
from this side? So Mark, can you tell me some of the non-alcohol related partners that you have?
Certainly. So, like I said, we worked. I spent actually a few years traveling the country working on what were the common denominators in food markets, what made them work best as far as customer enjoyment and flow through there, and then what we thought was appropriate for Fargo. So the group that we built to kind of offer that mix of retail, mix of food and drink, and then also that off sale and on sale concept of like for food, shopping, things like that. So the businesses that will be in the market will be Blackbird Woodfire Pizza, Thunder Coffee Roastery, the groups from KBS, which would be Unicorn Park Fine Foodery, the Luna Market, which would be like the cheese, butcher, charcuterie stuff, Mungata Wine and Raw Bar, Duchessa Gelato and Cows & Co. Creamery, Live in the Dream Pottery, the Plant Supply Store, Red River Refillery, which is it's a bulk cleaning, environmentally friendly cleaning and bath and body product business. Bark and Biscuit, which is like a dog treat, dog pet supply thing, and then Unglued Craft Store, and then and Drecker Brewing as well.
That's
So you
just-
can see there's a lot of businesses and a lot of activity that's going to take place in Bruhala. It's certainly not just a bar or another place to go and consume alcohol. There's going to be a lot of different things going on, and when we speak to Mungata and the things and Luna and things that Nikki has done in the past, I think everybody would agree that everything is at the highest level, and you don't see diners, drive-ins and dives and Guy Fieri coming to just any old place. They go to Soul Kitchen and places like that, and Blackbird Pizza, and those are the places that Mark is offering the opportunity to have another experience.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions?
I've got a question, Mark. So basically, I'm trying to envision this, and thanks for the drawings and stuff that we had the last meeting. So you have a brewery, and there's basically a mall type of a area attached to it, correct? And then there's like convention or dining, wedding partying, part of a motel or whatever, right?
Sure.
So I think the concern that the competitors or the market will have to this is that there's different alcohol venues in there, but in effect, the licensed area is the whole mall. In other words, alcohol will be able to move out of these places out into the common area, or as you shop, if you want to go into the cheese shop, you can have a glass of wine with you, et cetera. Is that correct?
That's correct. And we don't use the term the mall area, and it's separate from the brewery. This is if you've seen it on First Avenue, these are two distinctly different buildings, connected, and there's flow between them. But yeah, you'd be able to peruse around the whole establishment across those different shops and do that there.
Okay, well, one thing, and maybe Nancy, you could help on this, or maybe you know, maybe you don't, but it seems to me the state of North Dakota, you have to get licenses from them, obviously, you know that, that alcohol can only be served and consumed within the confines of that license. In other words, if Nikki has a restaurant there and she gets a state license, it's described by the boundaries of the walls, and the alcohol can only be served and consumed there. Now, some people get around that, whether it's the city has downtown days where people can carry stuff around, they get special permits, et cetera. But I'm not sure if what you're talking about is legal according to the state, for somebody to buy on-premise alcohol and then wander out and visit other businesses. And I do think there are customer or competitors of yours that have concerns about that too, as a fairness factor.
I'm sure that competitors have questions and want to bring up these things, but this is a concept that the components of it are not new to Fargo. That aspect is allowed in other areas, and the way that you let me say that the state law on it regards where the sale of an alcohol can happen, and that has to happen on a licensed premises. One of the examples that we use in Fargo is that we allow alcohol to be on city sidewalks. Now, that's explicitly illegal by the state, and the law that breaks is that that's public consumption. So the city creates a patio permit that allows you to not be charged with public consumption when you're sitting on a sidewalk drinking. You still can't do service out on that sidewalk, which I would question whether that's happening by any of those competitors. I think they're all serving on those patios. This example is service is done on the licensed premises for each place. There's no entry into the public right of way, and that's all within the bounds of what the state law is. It's very clear.
So are you sure there's not alcohol that's sold has to be consumed on that premise too?
It has to be sold on the premises. And
I'm
that's
talking
my-
about consumed. I know obviously it has to be sold on the premise, but it seems to me that I've run into this before, that alcohol has to be consumed within those walls. It's probably similar to what you're talking about, the sidewalk. Well, that's moot points, because I'm not a lawyer and, I can look it up, but I'm not sure, I'm not gonna, say, make a decision based on my opinion. I'd like an attorney's opinion, but I think you could run into problems there. I'm wondering if there's other issues, liability issues and so forth, if you have a whole mall from different places that are serving alcohol. If somebody gets in trouble, how do you determine?
That's an easy solution. I mean, the insurance companies are very good at separating those liabilities. It happens, those liabilities are not separate from any bar that's next door to another bar downtown. They can't prove whether that alcohol is consumed anywhere else. It's pretty clear for us to be able to show where alcohol was consumed, and I wish I could show you what my insurance plans are. They're quite extensive, and we've had to go through lots of talks on this. No issues brought up by any insurance that has quoted on this.
Nancy, do you have any kind of opinion on,
Well, frankly, I don't, because I would have to look into it further. I am looking at, on my phone, the statutes. I don't know the concept, and I don't know if we're talking licensed premises, the entire space is a licensed premise, or the individual space. So I would need maybe more information and a little bit more time to look into it.
and then obviously this place will have, adults and children and everybody in the community is welcome to be in the building.
That's updated over the last couple of years, and accompanied minors would be allowed.
Well, just accompanied minors, what?
That's what we've done. So as a business at Drecker, we've allowed accompanied minors. And I think that there's over the last couple of years, they've changed that a little bit so that now some minors can be involved in there, but it's our policy has always been accompanied minors on that. Just like a restaurant that serves alcohol.
I think that's exactly right. The restaurants that serve alcohol, if the minor is accompanied by the parent or guardian, then as long as it's a restaurant that's serving, then the minor can be present if they're with the parent. In order to be an unaccompanied minor, the restaurant has to sell more food than alcohol.
Okay, but I'm talking about in the common area, and maybe I'm envisioning this all wrong. If a group of high school kids want to walk through there and shop at the soap store or, one of the non-alcohol stores, is that okay for them to do that?
They would have to have an accompanying guardian or parent or guardian with them.
Okay.
Because it's part of the licensed premise.
So to make it simple for me, the whole building is being licensed as a beverage alcohol, similar to the Fargo Dome has little kiosks that sell beer, but the license entails the entire stadium.
Correct.
Is that
Yep.
how we're looking at that?
We're just incorporating two separate businesses to serve the same exact purpose that's being done.
Okay, very confusing to me. It's a great, again.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
I tell you, we get this from, every tenant that we've approached on this project, every city person we've come to, and when we get you out there and we look at it, it's all going to make sense, and it'll be very, you'll be very proud this is in Fargo.
So when you talk about that, when is your projected opening for your new addition? Do you?
I'd file that under the I don't predict the future comment I made earlier. No, I mean, we're hoping for early 2023. Construction's a little bit weird in this climate.
Very good. Any other comments or questions? Otherwise, do we have a motion?
Move to approve?
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Nay.
Motion carries. And now we're on to number 3, the Police Department Monthly Report, the General Report. Chief.
Good afternoon, everyone. Nothing too out of the ordinary on the monthly report. A couple of over intoxicated and some collecting a lot of fake IDs. So absent questions, I don't have anything more on that particular report. I will be putting together a end of year analysis for you for the January meeting in terms of violations, that kind of thing.
Chief, if you don't mind me asking, does this cold weather affect different things that go on in our city just generally from your perspective?
Well, cold weather, yeah, it keeps a lot of people out of off the streets, yes.
But do you see a decrease in incidents and things like that? Is that what you'd say, or not
It
necessarily?
gets slower in the colder weather, sure. Yeah, but, or the things that happen move inside, businesses or residences, but overall it slows down in the winter, sure.
Okay.
I saw that there was a meeting with the owner of the Windbreak. Who called that meeting? How did that come about? Could you provide any more details?
Well, we assign kind of officers to liaison with certain businesses, so I think that may have been an effort on the officer to go and do that, and it kind of follows. If you look, this happened on December 6th. On December 4th, we had an incident over there where we didn't necessarily get great cooperation from staff, so I would have to imagine that the officer decided to do some proactive work there and see what's going on with the owner.
So we've had ongoing issues there, and I think that's something that we, as a liquor control board, need to be monitoring, because this isn't, it's kind of been, and I don't know what your plan of action is, but to me, we can't just let it keep happening.
My plan of action is to get the Liquor Control Board to update ordinances so that, yes, that you have more control over that. And kind of along those same lines, I know that we want to wait for Kay next time, but in terms of the background process, that's before you, if you didn't catch it in the news, but the owner of Sicky's got arrested for sexual assault of a 14-year-old. And so should that become a conviction under our current scheme, we don't have any license renewal of that individual who would be operating a liquor establishment in our city. So just to kind of bolster that whole request and all of that, I think that that along with the proposal on the matrix that the city attorney has proposed would help give a little more leverage to the board to take some action on this.
Well, we can take action right here. We don't need to update anything right now. If we wanted to, we could move to revoke the Windbreak's liquor license. Isn't that correct?
City attorney question, please.
You could, if you made a finding that the operation was in violation of 1512, I think it's E, I don't have it right in front of me, but it's a disorderly conduct situation in violation of health and safety.
But we're a recommending board of the city commission, and we issue the liquor licenses. And so if we want to, we can discontinue their liquor license without a doubt. That's no question in my mind, since that's what we do. And so to say that we don't have any tools, that's not true. We have lots of tools.
Again, you do have that tool. There's a process question and notice of opportunity to be heard.
Very good. Any other comments or questions? I do think this is an ongoing issue, and obviously we can make improvements, but if we have continued things with people that it seems like they're not being very cooperative, we have lots of things even right now that we can do.
Similarly, Dave, could we make a motion to put them on probation? Just a strong word?
Well, that's my question, Nancy. If we can act, is there something we can do right now? Because to me, this is not new, especially with the Windbreak. The chief and I have met with them, and they continue to have issues. But what can we do at this point with the things that we have in our toolbox?
I think you could make a motion to provide notice of a hearing in the future to consider a violation of the license, and it is 1512B6, which provides that the licensee conducts his business in a manner which results in or encourages or is conducive to the creation of disturbance of the peace, disorderly conduct, or any other violation of federal, state, or city laws. You would make that motion. If you wish to have that considered, then we would provide notice and an opportunity for the licensee to be heard on that violation.
So it was interesting, just this morning, we discontinued, there was a landscaping company that we removed their ability to do business, and so we can do that. My question is, does it come to the Liquor Control Board first, then to the City Commission? So this morning, it was the City Commission that ruled on that. So can you talk a little bit about how that would go?
So that is a question. You would be able to make a recommendation to the city commission on that. Typically, this board is set up for that expertise, but it would be a final decision of the city commission based on your recommendation and an independent determination.
Go ahead, Chief.
And I could, for the next meeting, bring that into your report with all of the summation of those incidents for you to consider then.
So maybe we'll just keep this, if this is okay. I mean, if we want to, we can act today, but if this is okay with the board, we can keep this, and then it will be addressed at the next meeting. It will kind of, is that what you'd say? You'll summarize what's happened, or what?
Yeah, I can put together the year-end report and you can see all of the data and then, decide how you want to approach that, yes.
So I would prefer to do that if that's okay with everyone else. And then at the same time, Nancy, if you could kind of put this in writing, what our options would be, I think that would be good for all us, because to me, it's a very serious thing, but we should consider it and act accordingly. But once again, to summarize it, we would recommend this to the city commission, and then the city would take final action. But so at our next meeting, go ahead, and I'm sorry to keep talking. Go ahead.
I would just say that, to me, those kinds of motions, that's for something that's really egregious. And I think a lot of the ordinance changes that we've suggested kind of allow more for these more protracted issues where we're not seeing improvements. And so, I think that will make our lives a lot easier, that with these ordinance changes, I think they're very moderate. We've gotten a lot of input from the community on it. And, I like to know the options, of course, if something terrible is going on at a bar. But we've been talking about the windbreak for months and months. And I think having ordinance changes for these kind of slow burn situations where we're not seeing improvement is the way to go.
So I think that's good. If this is okay with you, that we'll proceed and cover this. This will be on the agenda at our next meeting, if that's okay. Because I think you've made an excellent point. You don't want to react too quickly, and but this has been chronic. And it's not just this year. It's been going on for a long time. When we tried to meet with them, this was when you and I met, the chief and I met with them. They were not that responsive, and I'm not sure I'm seeing much of a change. So maybe this will get their attention, and maybe not. So that's, go ahead.
Refresh my memory, where are we at with the potential ordinance changes? Has that been drafted, or I guess I don't recall?
Nancy, can you talk a little bit about that?
So we did move forward with the the server training with the North Dakota Safety Council. That was the only motion that had been made from this board to go up to City Commission. You do have a list of recommendations, but no action has been taken on any of those recommendations, including the manager and the owner issue that was delayed again today. So you do there's been discussion several times. There was a list provided kind of what those items are recommended from staff for changes. Once you act on those, it would go up to City Commission to direct those particular ordinance changes.
Okay, anything else, Chief? Or any other questions for the chief?
So how far are we from recommending those changes to the city commission?
Well, basically, they're asking us to come up with what we think needs to change.
And who's gonna,
We're waiting for them and they're waiting for us.
so who's gonna craft the list of changes we want?
They gave us a list a
we-
couple of months ago, I
Right,
think.
we've provided some suggestions, so Nancy can chime in here too, but I believe it would just require the board to review those changes and recommend those motions for the city, to go to the commission to direct the city attorney to craft the ordinance language.
Just a summary of the memorandum to the Liquor Control Board on ordinance recommendations was the 100% server training with the National Safety Council, or State Council, management background investigations, de-escalation training, penalty overhaul, and technology uses were presented to you for direction back to City Commission.
And I think we looked into the technology one. We had, there were discussions with business owners about what would be good practices. De-escalation training, I know there was some discussion about that when we were talking about the server training, what wasn't included, so we kind of put that off to the side. I do think we need to include the penalty overhaul as well at our next meeting.
And Nancy, I thought we wanted to push forward the registration and the names of the managers and the owners and.
That's on the agenda today, sir, but it looks like we're going to push it till Kay's back at the next meeting, right? Correct, sir?
All right.
Anything else to add, Chief? Thank you for waiting and thank you for your contribution.
Okay.
And so with that, are we ready to move on? I don't know if any comments or questions, but we'll move on to number 4, the memo for recommending ordinance changes. And 4A, recommendation to require owner-manager changes, reporting requirements, request from board members to postpone until January. Steve?
It was my understanding that Lydia and Kay were both going to be absent. Obviously, I misunderstood Lydia's schedule. She is present. We probably could have moved forward, but anyway, Kay did request that she wanted to be here when we had those discussions. If you do recall, we brought something forward in November and we're asked to, give it a time to think about it and that type of thing and bring it back at this meeting. And then Kay requested that we move it forward one more month. So I guess that would be the actions, just to bring it back in January.
So we'll just continue it for the next meeting, correct?
Yes.
Okay, if that's okay with everybody.
Do you need us to vote
Okay,
on that?
and then the last item on the agenda is other items, Tavern Grill and Tavern Grill Grotto. Steve?
So something came to our attention in the auditor's office that the Tavern Grotto was selling mixed drinks, and they were not licensed for that. And so it took a little bit of investigating to see exactly what was going on. We don't have substantial proof, I guess, that mixed drinks were being served, but in subsequent discussions with them, and I needed to go out and actually see the facility and see how it's set up and everything, and they have 2 separate facilities, so there are 2 separate licenses, but the Grotto does not have a kitchen in it. They can do some light hors d'oeuvres and some of that kind of stuff, but it's certainly not a kitchen where you're preparing a meal, which would be the requirement of the license that they were issued. So just yesterday at 4:30, I got an email from them. One of the alternatives for them would be to change from the I license, which is beer and wine, but requires food sales, to go to the CW license, which is beer and wine, not requiring food sales. And that's the option that they would like to move forward with. And so if that's acceptable to the board, we'll get them into the license class that they should have. They fully understand now that they're not to serve mixed drinks. I think there was some confusion, this combination of 2 businesses side by side that are both with the same owner. I mean, I can understand how they were a little bit confused, but on the other hand, it's your license, you need to know what you've got. So, any questions?
Any questions?
So they were confused about their license,
Yes.
and yet it happened. Correct? So,
Well, we don't have proof that anybody was served a mixed drink. But other than when we look at their website, you can see a picture with a fully stocked bar. So,
is there a fine associated with this?
well, in discussion with Nancy, we would need to have a situation where they were charged with something, and we didn't feel like we had the evidence to charge them. And so at that point, I issued a letter to them that basically, I'll call it a cease and desist letter that said, hey, you're not licensed to sell mixed drinks. You need to stop that. And they immediately did. And, we followed up with PD checking on them to see if they, we asked them to go out and check and see, is there anybody in there drinking, something other than beer and wine? And they had found no evidence of that. So we feel that they will be compliant moving forward. We do like the idea that they get into the license that doesn't require the food sales. Now we're not trying to, take the sales from the tavern and calling them, because what they're doing is making the food in the tavern and bringing it over to the grotto and serving it. And then they're trying to count that food sales. Well, you can't do that. The food has to be prepared on site. So,
By indicating that they were confused about their license, that's kind of saying that's acknowledging that they were doing something that wasn't on their license.
yeah, maybe, maybe my approach to them wasn't the right way. I don't know, but anyway.
I hear what you're saying. I guess my point is, what's the saying, the ignorance of the law is not an excuse for breaking it? I don't know. But,
But I think the chief would concur. I mean, I think legal counsel would concur that you need to have something that you've observed, that you've cited. When police went out there, I told them if you see somebody drinking alcohol that, is a mixed drink, then we have something we can cite, and then we can move forward with something. But,
I get that.
the timing of all this, it probably all happened within the last 7 days. The conversations that we had back and forth, maybe a little longer than that. I remember driving out there and, the weather that we had, and then going out and seeing, how the situation, how it's set up. I had never been out there before. I didn't know that they weren't connected. I thought that the two buildings had a physical connection, and they don't. You have to walk outside to get from one building to the other, and so that gives us that separation of the buildings. And so now those food sales can't count, and there's just
I just
whole
want
series
to
of
make
things.
sure that, the people who hold these licenses, I know that they have extensive conversations with you about what their licenses cover, and that, I'm not interested, and I didn't know what my license was for it. That's not acceptable.
And I don't know if they have been serving alcohol, from day one, the spirits, or if that was just something that came across recently. And, they have full alcohol service in the tavern, the restaurant, and, if they thought, well, it's all one business. So anyway, if it's acceptable to the board, we'll move them to a CW license. They will be fully compliant at that point.
And so we'll just put it on our next agenda and to make sure that this gets resolved. I guess we would appreciate that.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Anything else to add? Otherwise, thank you everybody for the meeting and the conversation. And I think we did a good job. Have a good holiday season and Happy New Year. We are adjourned.